What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So last week, Creature Commandos, the first project in James Gunn's new DCU, hit max with its finale, and I'm here to talk spoiler-free thoughts on this, so don't worry about there being any major plot points that are spoiled for you. I want you to kind of go into this, because I feel like the less you know about the show, the more you're going to enjoy it. And all that to say, right off the bat, I really dug this series. I think it really encapsulates in a nutshell everything that James Gunn does very well with these comic book characters, taking these very obscure ragtag team of misfits or anti-heroes, you could say, bringing them together where they have to work as a team and kind of work outside of their zone, you could say. And he just does a fantastic job of making each one relatable characters that, for example, Dr. Phosphorus or the Weasel, these characters that you wouldn't really think are the most relatable characters that you might even shed a tear for. But he does a really good job at just making you feel for these characters, relate to them, and want to see them succeed, while also being like, yeah, these aren't, kind of like how we did in the Suicide Squad, the 2021 film, making these characters very much like these are bad people, but they're also, they also came from a bad place. Like, he's not excusing their behavior, but he's really just emphasizing the fact that these are, bad people, a lot of them at least, but they're also, their heart may or may not be in the right place. They may actually have standards. They may come from a place where someone they loved was hurt, and it's formed who they are. So these very relatable anti-heroes, villains, and I think that really helps you kind of relate to this show and these characters. The animation is absolutely, I mean, it's not, it's not like Spider-Verse level good, but for an animated show, I think it's very well done. It's very vibrant, colorful. It very much, I guess as a point of reference, is in line with a lot of the DC AMU, if you've seen those, like the Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War, Batman Hush. It's very much in that same kind of vein of animation, you could say. And, I think it fits well with DC. It works. It's very, again, vibrant, colorful. The colors just really like pop out on the screen. I really enjoyed the animation for the most part. I've heard some people say it's not great, but like, what did you expect? I mean, again, it's not going to be Spider-Verse level. It's not going to be as groundbreaking as the first Toy Story was, for example. But, as far as 2D animation goes, I really enjoyed it, and I thought the animators did a really great job with this. The voice acting is, once again, very good across the board, really. Sean Gunn, I think he voiced G.I. Robot and Weasel, who, Weasel doesn't really talk, but G.I. Robot was honestly a lot of fun, probably one of my favorite characters in the show. You have Rick Flag, played by Frank Grillo, or Rick Flag Sr., I should say, the father of Flag in the 2021 Suicide Squad, as a point of reference. And, he fits the voice well. He kind of, a lot of people said in the first couple episodes, he really kind of looks like James Gunn in a way. So a lot of people are saying, oh, he's kind of a self-insert character. I mean, yeah, kind of, but like, who really cares? I mean, it's not like he's a bad character, that his character design is just, it completely takes you out of the show because all you see is James Gunn. Like, he's his very own distinct character with his own personality traits. So I feel like a lot of that criticism is a bit unfair. And in a lot of ways, he is one of my favorite characters in the show. He does bring that human aspect to it, one to where he's actually a legitimately good guy that really wants, he wants the world to be saved. He wants, justice to be brought. So he's very much the kind of lone star, you could say, of an actual good character to root for, like all around, not just, okay, well, you sympathize with them, like, he's an actual solid character. The action sequences, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you'll know they're just as violent and bloody as James Gunn's Suicide Squad or Peacemaker, and, they're just gleefully enjoyable, you could say. I mean, it is over the top, just in your face, like boys level, everything flying everywhere, but it just works in the context of the show. It works for what James Gunn's trying to do. It really holds no bars. I mean, this might be the most unhinged James Gunn project to date, and it seems like in this area of kind of more mature comic book series like that he's done, like Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, it just feels like each one just kind of like pushes that envelope just a little more than the last. And yeah, I mean, I don't know where this man's gonna go next. Like, he's really got to rein it in for Superman, and if that trailer's any indication, I think he will. It's just, it's crazy to see him go from Creature Commandos or Peacemaker to Superman, but here we are. Let's see what he can do. And moving on, I think, again, the emotional depth of this show is very rich. I think it's episode 4, where it's kind of the backstory to Weasel. It's wonderful. I mean, I think it might be, and I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Rocket's backstory, some elements of Peacemaker and whatnot, but I gotta say, what they do with Weasel, and again, no spoilers in that 4th episode, that might be the most emotional sequence in anything James Gunn has ever done. I mean, I gotta admit, I'm an animal lover. I don't really know what Weasel is, but he's close enough to an animal, and just, you take that away, and it's still just a very impactful, emotional scene, the way that they go about it. If you've seen the show, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't and you want to watch it, absolutely do, and then you're gonna know for sure what I'm talking about. It's just so well done, so well done. And again, he's just able to make every character so relatable. And this show is like 7 episodes long, 8 episodes long or whatever, and every single episode, I like how kind of in the midst of your main story, you actually have backstory to, like, each episode kind of serves as a backstory to kind of help you understand each character's motivations more. Like, there's an episode of Frankenstein, again, there's one of Weasel, the Bride. There's other surprise characters in here that kind of get hinted or teased at, even that, aren't part of the main Creature Commandos, but may or may not have a very strong presence going forward in the DCU. And again, it just really speaks to James Gunn's biggest strength, to where he can just make every character, good or bad or in the middle, just really so relatable to some degree or another. And moving on, the show does boast a few genuinely, like, when I say surprising, I mean, I legitimately didn't see where it was coming. I'm sure some people are smarter than me and may have figured it out in the first episode, or know the comic lore more for these characters, in which case, great, kudos to you. For me, though, I didn't know a lot of these characters going in. I'm a very, like, moderate DC fan. I don't know, like, the deep mythology and lore of, characters like G.I. Robot, Frankenstein, whatever, those kind of characters. So, maybe it was right there in front of me the whole time. When I was watching this show, they really did a good job of kind of keeping characters, like the twists and turns of character reveals or certain motivations coming to light, things like that. They did a really good job at, I think, really kind of giving the audience a misdirect, in particular with a certain female character, that's all I'm going to say, that has a very heavy presence in the first couple episodes, and then they just they kind of like tease it, and then they diffuse it, and then by the end of the show, you're like, I did not know that was coming. Like, they kind of like play with your emotions a little, that I really like. I just think it, again, it just really adds to, I think, the richness of the series as a whole. The shock value, again, the over-the-top violence, the oftentimes just no-holds-barred humor really works in favor of the show. Again, this is probably the most James Gunn project of anything James Gunn does. And if you can't say that, then I think you can admit it's definitely pure James Gunn, in that this is just very much that kind of series to where James Gunn is like given a ton of crack and $50 million and says, go crazy, do whatever you want. And that's what he does. And for the most part, I think it's really great and it works, but there are a couple negatives that I have, and that's going to lead me to my negatives of this show. And I will say, probably the biggest negative that stuck out to me was that the timeline placement was a bit confusing, because this isn't really a spoiler, but it very clearly takes place in a world where at least most of the events of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker actually happened. But it's also not set in the DCEU, and it's also more or less the start of the DCU. Like, this takes place in the same world as the Suicide Squad that was the DCU, but it also takes place in the same world as the upcoming Superman film. It just seems like he's trying to cherry pick a little too much. I really think if you're going to do a hard reboot for DC, you need to do a hard reboot for DC, and not just keep the ones that, James Gunn makes, and then James Gunn is like, well, let me just put these in the DCU. Like, if you want to do a Peacemaker season 2, and I really enjoyed the first season of Peacemaker personally, I say go for it. like we the audience can understand different universes, especially by now where the multiverse saga has been overplayed to the point where it's insanity in the MCU and even the DCU to a certain degree. Like we understand not everything has to be in the same world. But you know, it's not a super big complaint. It's just kind of annoying because there are like lines in the DC. There's things, especially in Peacemaker, and spoilers if you haven't seen that show, where like Jason Momoa's Aquaman shows up at the end of that, and some of the other Justice League members. Well, he's recasting Wonder Woman. Aquaman's been cast as Lobo, which, by the way, I absolutely think that's a perfect casting choice. But yeah, so it's just things like that that kind of annoy me, just because I'm a lore guy and I like, you know, I like things to connect, but I also want them to, if they don't connect, to be their own separate thing. Like, don't try to shoehorn it in. So that just bothered me. Maybe it's the OCD, undiagnosed OCD in me coming out. I don't know. But yeah, I guess the only other thing I could say is that there are some plot points that do move pretty quickly in the show. Like, I guess you could say some moments that are meant to be like, I feel really impactful or really have a strong importance to the overall story do seem to move a little too quickly, in my opinion, just because the pacing of this series is like 20 to 22 minutes per episode. And I feel like if we just had a minute or two more, it would have really helped to kind of keep the plot from not this kind of like jerking back and forth between, or feeling like it jerks back and forth between the backstories for these characters and the overall main story. But, you know, all that aside, I really dug Creature Commandos. It's a very strong start to the DCU, very strong continuation from Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad. Really great cameos, really great surprises, and even some teases for where the DCU might go moving forward. So overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Again, I highly recommend it. Check it out if you're interested to see how the DCU more or less begins, or the tail end of the DCEU. Again, it's a little confusing for the placement of this, but yeah, overall, guys, I highly recommend it. Check it out if you haven't seen it. And more importantly, if you have seen it, let me know in the comments down below what you think. Have you seen Creature Commandos? Did you love it, hate it? Are you in the middle, or are you like me and still have some concerns about the DCU moving forward? Anyways, guys, that's all I got for today. Make sure, again, to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video, and I'll catch you all. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. If you liked what you've seen here and you want to see more, please feel free to like, subscribe, share, and check out my other videos in the link in the description down below, and I will see you all later.